All right, let's get ready for the first video Red Rain podcast with your host, Walter Mitchell.
Thank you, Kyle Little Rock Ledbetter from Slam Diego. Uh, Good to be with you all today, Cardinal fans. We're kicking off. We're going to go on YouTube with a video of this episode, and so it's an inaugural of sorts. I've been getting some encouragement from others to do this, so hopefully you'll enjoy it, and we'll enjoy it. And but Today we want to talk about Marvin Harrison Jr. and what's going on with him. I'm calling it Marvin Harrison Jr. has NFL waiting and wondering, um, which is interesting because the pre-draft process was very much like that, and there was kind of a bit of a mystery surrounding Marvin Harrison Jr. Why he wouldn't talk to the media at the combine. We know by now all the things that went into the pre-draft process, where Marvin Harrison Jr. elected not to do some of the basics that most NFL prospects go through in the process. And he asked teams if he needed to do more, and apparently teams said no. So can't blame him for that. He carved his own path there. The only question I had was how competitive he wanted to get about becoming the number one pick, because many pundits were saying he was potentially the best player in the draft, and so I mean, there was a possibility that he could have been the number one draft pick. However, by choosing to, and there's a possibility that that never would have happened too. But the way that his dad figured it out was that quarterbacks were going to go early, and so why, quote unquote, break our tails, run around the country doing extra stuff when it appears that we're sort of inevitable that the quarterbacks will go first, and then Marvin will have his shot later. So pretty much locked him into a top 5 pick. And the Cardinals seemed receptive to all of that. They were just waiting to meet with him on his pro day. Oh, no, excuse me. He didn't have a pro day. Meet with him on his 30 visit. And that's when Monty said that, it went really well. And once they got to know Marvin, the person, they were then very poised and eager to make the pick at 4, given they didn't get a trade offer that blew their socks off. But now that Marvin's been drafted by the Cardinals and he's been in camp, not under contract yet. He still doesn't have an agent. He still hasn't signed the NFLPA licensing agreement, so nobody can buy a jersey. He's got the lawsuit now with Fanatics, where they're disputing whether he signed a contract with them. What's not in dispute is apparently he did make $1 million or more in his agreement with them at Ohio State. And now there's questions as to the length of what that contract was and whether Marvin Harrison Jr. actually signed it. And now it's holding up the process. He's kind of leveraging that, the Fanatics deal, to try to figure out, how to maximize his, control over the licensing agreements and this and that, which is curious because, I mean, this kind of attention, I'm not sure it's good, because the attention that he received prior to being drafted created question marks, and amongst the media, amongst pundits, and also, now this creates a question mark of what's going to happen, because between Fanatics, for one, for two is, when will he agree to sign his NFLPA licensing agreement, if at all? Would he want to just kind of, take this matter into his own hands and market his own jerseys? Can he even do that? But he's got he's got a company called Marvin Harrison Jr Business Foundation, um, business industries. So he's tried to create his own business industry. What's interesting too is that he's also signed the deal with New Balance, which is between $5 and $10 million initially. So he's got that going for him. He also has, invested. He's been, sponsoring the foundation, Ronald McDonald's House Charities, Monarch, the footwear company, Kane Footwear, On It Athlete, Chipotle, and then of course the New Balance at $5 to $10 million. What's interesting is his contract looks to be $36.9 million guaranteed once he signs it. And that's a big question too. When is he going to sign that, and how is he going to work out the details with the Cardinals?
The other part of the New Balance deal that we figured out a couple of weeks ago is that he's going to be their first signature shoe football athlete. So he's going to have his own sneaker, or he's going to have his own cleat that New Balance, I think, only has like 3 football people right now. So they're just starting out their football line, and he's going to be the first New Balance athlete that's going to have his own shoe deal.
Yeah, which is great. I mean, all the more power to him, and it's certainly going to help his brand, and it could be a real boon for New Balance to get in on the football industry with Marvin Harrison Jr. In their sites, and promoting their goods. So that. But what's curious about all this is that, and obviously we have to understand this is, a lot of these decisions he's making are business decisions, and we have to respect that to a certain degree. But what I wonder about is whether all this attention is productive or a distraction, not only to him but to the Cardinals. I mean, I've been struggling with it from the beginning, since the pre-draft process, and I'm sort of at a loss now for how to feel about this. I'm also worried that because he doesn't have an agent, what he might be thinking of doing in terms of suing the NFL for unconstitutional labor practices. There's a lot there. I mean, I posted a tweet yesterday, a poll where I asked, what if Marvin Harrison Jr. claimed to the Cardinals that, look, I was the best player in this draft, I should be paid accordingly. Now every draft slot, is set in stone apparently, but where there's wiggle room, or there's a certain amount of, the reason why only one top 10 pick this year has signed already is that there's all sorts of negotiations that go on between signing bonuses, lump sum figures, distribution of the 4 years of the contract. I mean, there are a lot of details that can be need to be worked out. And I'm not sure I'm so confident with the Cardinals and how they do their business in those situations that they're going to be able to iron this out with Marvin Harrison Jr. quickly. It wouldn't surprise me if he's the last player to sign, and I'm hoping I'm wrong. I'm hoping that there's clarity suddenly. This lawsuit might hold a lot of things up. Nobody on the planet can get a Marvin Harrison Jr. Jersey right now. I mean, a lot of positive buzz could have been coming from that. Instead, it's like waiting and in my case, worrying. Some of you who've often said to me it's no big deal when Cardinal star players kind of draw these kind of attentions to themselves. And I always worry about the kind of negativity that can come from this kind of attention, and it certainly doesn't look like everything's focused in on football right now. It looks like a lot of it is money related and marketing related. He's got a right to get this all straightened out the way that he wants it. We know his dad is a huge influence. But I mean, I was putting the numbers together and I'm realizing that before Marvin Harrison Jr. takes a single snap in the NFL in a real game, chances are he's already got somewhere close to 60 million in his pocket, guaranteed. So that's not a bad way to start. Plus, it's not like he's coming, from a from a need standpoint, because his dad's net worth is close to 30 million. I mean, so he comes from privilege. So some of this, just like all this attention to the business aspect from that standpoint seems a little over the top, seems a little unnecessary. Because I think we're all hoping for the day when this all gets behind people and Marvin Harrison is signed and then doing full sprints at practice. I mean, to his credit, he's not holding out without a contract. He's in the building. He's doing all you want him to do, albeit at just kind of walking or slightly jogging through the motions. But he's learning the system. He's doing all that. He was at the charity event when the rookies went to meet with kids with cancer, and he was a real positive presence there. I mean, he's handled himself really well in the building, and he's making, forging good relationships with Michael Wilson and with Zay Jones, apparently. If you heard Zay Jones yesterday, he gave a very impressive press conference where he talked about building something special here with the Cardinals and being impressed with how the Cardinals handled him in the free agent process and felt a strong connection to them. Those are all really good signs. But at the same time, it made me wonder, for right or for wrong, whether the Zay Jones signing was actually a safeguard in case they can't get Marvin Harrison Jr. signed. Will Marvin Harrison Jr. be, feel comfortable signing under the NFL bylaws of the CBA, collective bargaining agreement? These are things, and people have wondered about this. These are things that troubled his dad. And if he's going to be a true maverick, he might be coming in here to try to challenge all of these things, or some of them, or make issues out of some of them. And as he's done with the pre-draft process to a certain degree, so. And I'm not sure in the long run or the short run whether that's good or bad, or sometimes catalysts for change can be a wonderful thing. It's just that it's been a long process of waiting and wondering for Marvin Harrison Jr. And the waiting and wondering is going to continue um, until all this gets resolved, and until you know contracts are signed and agreements are signed. Kyle, what's your take on all this?
So what I think is interesting most recently is the Fanatics lawsuit, because that's something that just I have never seen before. And of course, you've never seen it before because in the pre-NIL era, this wasn't something that was ever going to come about, because a lot of these deals that would get made were under the table and not necessarily with a giant corporation like Fanatics. But I'm curious to see some of the details around it, because does the Fanatics lawsuit connect to why he hasn't signed the NFLPA agreement yet? We don't know the answer to that yet, but the two things seem kind of in confluence with each other potentially, because NFL licensing deals are with Nike, and if there's some sort of express language in the contract that said he's going to have to pay back this money if he signs the licensing agreement, is that possibly what's at play here? I don't know the answer to it. I'm just curious to see what details come out of the Fanatics lawsuit, because if that's the reason why the lawsuit is coming through, I know they're in dispute about whether he signed, like they gave him the money, but the question I think is whether he actually signed a contract or didn't sign a contract. Like, can they legally hold this up in court and say, you know, you're required to still only use Fanatics products even into your first year of the NFL? I'm not sure exactly where it's going to go, but I think that's the one that I think is more interesting. Is the not signing the NFLPA deal because of what you were talking about before, being a Maverick and bucking back against the fact that like the player pool for jersey sales all gets pooled together. A lot of people don't know exactly how it works. It gets pooled together, and then a certain percentage of the jerseys get distributed evenly among players, and there's certain discrepancies in there for higher selling players and things like that. But a surprisingly less amount of money than you expect from jersey sales actually gets to the player of the jersey that you're buying. And so is it about bucking back against that, or is it a very Marvin Harrison Jr. specific case where the lawsuit and maybe some details that we don't know about him wanting to sell his Ohio State jerseys and his personal merchandising for the first few months, like he wanted to capitalize on his own sales instead of immediately having the money go to the NFL. Is it about that, or is it legally specific, like he's not signing it because he needs to sort out this deal with Fanatics that he had in college? I'm curious to see what the actual details are, because I feel like based on we don't have access to the lawsuit. We just know the details that were reported in the New York Times a few days ago. So I'm curious to see what connection point to that, to the jersey part, is connected to the Fanatics lawsuit.
Yeah, really good point. And it's a wait and see. And in some ways, I mean, these kind of distractions can hold up a football team. And you know, that's my biggest worry, is the kind of distractions that these situations create. You kind of ideally want it to just be smooth, the transition into the team being smooth. No, the tensions, whatever questions were there before the draft are now over and solved. Marvin Harrison Jr. has said he's excited to be on the Cardinals, and for various number of reasons. And so that was exciting, and there was momentum heading up after the draft for a real, feel good story. And now this. So if you had a prediction, Kyle, what do you think is going to happen?
Well, so here's what I'll say. If this is the thing I feel very confident about. If this is about trying to buck back against the structures and systems of the NFL, if this is about wanting to have more control of your abilities, the consistent unfair labor practices, if this is about a greater push against the structures of the NFL that he's trying to stand on, that stand is not going to work. Like, it simply is not going to work. They're not, these things are collectively bargained, and unions with hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars of access to resources are not able to fight back against the NFL on this. No matter how good of a football player Marvin Harrison Jr is, he is not going to be able to buck back against the structures and systems of the NFL. It's just, these things are collectively bargained. He doesn't have the wherewithal because his career is too short, and he just simply doesn't have the power to do that. So if that's what it's going to be, it's not going to work. But what I think he can ultimately win is, like you said, maybe a $40 million rookie contract comparable to the number one pick in the draft. Obviously, last year, the big conversation around not having an agent was connected to Lamar Jackson and him negotiating his contract with, I believe his mother was his agent, or some family member was representing him as an agent. And that ultimately was a year and a half long saga where the Ravens and him were in limbo and negotiating a contract, and then there was briefly a trade request that wasn't honored, but ultimately it ended up with Lamar getting the richest contract, not in terms of guaranteed dollars, but in terms of total value that there had been in the NFL. So ultimately, he had the value to get the contract with or without an agent, but I don't think this is necessarily that, because, like you said, the rookie contracts are all structured so that there's a slotted amount of money that you're getting by the draft pick. So it's ultimately pretty simple, and it's not too much to worry about because, like you said, he's in the building anyways. I think ultimately he's going to sign the contract sometime in August, maybe before then. I mean, I think only 2 or 3 of the first round picks have actually signed their contracts already. There's this weird thing that because of the way the structure of the contracts is set up, most people wait until August because or wait till July because the team and like leverage moves to the player the closer you get to the start of the season. But I think it's like Bo Nix and maybe Drake May or someone else are like the only rookies that have actually signed their contracts so far. I don't think that part is any deal at all. It's just the if I were to predict, I would imagine he's going to sign that contract sometime in July and August, like most of the rookies do, for a dollar value that's probably going to be somewhere between 36 and 40 million, which in the grand scheme of things is a lot of money. We're talking a 7-figure difference, but you're right. Going in, that's the difference in value is the value of the Fanatics deal that he took, essentially. Like, it's ultimately for Marvin Harrison Jr. specifically, especially someone who has 8 figures worth of endorsement deals already lined up before getting to the NFL. This is going to be less of a battle, I would imagine, than say the 28th pick in the draft. Say like Darius Robinson. Darius Robinson probably has more money tied to that rookie contract in terms of his total dollar value. So maybe he's more likely to have an agent who's trying to negotiate hard to get up on the allotted slot money. But I don't think the contract is going to be much of a thing for Marvin Harrison Jr.
So I've been wondering too whether he's going to want all the money up front of the contract, and that's part of the negotiation. Is that, how much are you going to get in a signing bonus? The only player that I know of, first top 10 pick who signed is Malik Neighbors, signed with the Giants. I think he got 32.8 million guaranteed, fully guaranteed, with an $18.2 million signing bonus, and then the 5th-year option, fully guaranteed if the team exercises it, picks it up. It's a good deal, I think.
Seems pretty standard.
But you didn't get all of it. Yeah, but you didn't get all of it up front. But it's all guaranteed. It's just a question of when. Now, we know that Bidwell does his contracts in July because he's amassing revenue to pay off these big signing bonuses. That's why he waited with Kyler Murray that long, for example, and in other situations. So I think your prediction is spot on. I think we have to wait all the way to then. And I hope I'm wrong, but I think there might be a degree of uncertainty as to whether he signs this contract. I mean, I think that part of the purpose of not signing the NFLPA licensing agreement might be tied to I haven't signed my own contract yet. And the fact that he doesn't have an agent, I mean, other pundits have talked about this on, talk radio and on social media, that he could have a lawsuit ready to, like, say the heck with this with the NFL and petition to go back to Ohio State. Now that seems bizarre and unthinkable to me, but what doesn't, in light of the way that Marvin Harrison Jr seems to be very focused on the finance aspects and business aspects here, I'm not sure what to think. Not sure what he has in mind, but it kind of makes me a little nervous, seeing as the rationale his father gave on that, on the first time we ever heard Marvin Harrison Jr talk in the pre-draft process, which he gave his son one sentence, was the whole reason was the focus was so they could concentrate strictly on football. And in learning all this, what's happening behind the scenes is this is a very strong calculation, I think, on his dad's part and his son's part on the business aspects of now becoming a pro, which to a degree, you would assume all of the prospects have to do. But when is the focus on football going to be strictly on football and the other stuff put aside? That's my big question there.
Well, I think that's why the lawsuit is so strange, right? That's something that I think even in the whole process of, will he speak to the media or not? Will he meet with teams or do a pro day or combine? Like the conversation of all that stuff that we were having back in March and April, and then the NFLPA licensing thing that we kind of found out on draft day, which sparked another conversation. Like all of that was there, and all of that was not football stuff. But the lawsuit one is one that I just look at. I'm like, I don't know what to do with this, because I've literally never seen anything like this before. And maybe this is a byproduct of an NIL world now, where star athletes maybe are making mistakes on signing a contract. Because if it does turn out to be the lawsuit is the thing that's holding up the NFLPA licensing agreement, then he messed up somewhere in the Fanatics deal, where for some reason the contract he signed extended beyond his college days. And that would just be, right, that would be counterintuitive to everything you're talking about them trying to create a business and maximize dollars in different places. Like signing that deal would compromise your ability to make money once you become an NFL pro. So it doesn't add up. And that's the part that just kind of makes me like, I genuinely don't know what to do with this. Is it something? Is it nothing? I genuinely don't know, because I've just never seen anything like it.
Yeah, no, what's interesting is Ohio State writers are chiming in on this, and not in a good way towards Marvin Harrison Jr. And they all recognize his tremendous talent, but let me, for example, read something from Scarlet and Game by Ryan Stano, one of their really good reporters there, op-ed guys. And he says, Harrison Jr. signed an NIL deal with Fanatics while he was with Ohio State for his final year. He's trying to extract them for more money. So that's why he hasn't signed his paperwork since entering the league. Now he's being sued by Fanatics for breach of contract. You can read more about it here with the article by ESPN. And he says, I have no idea why Harrison Jr. insists on being a distraction this early in his NFL career. He doesn't need the money. His dad made a boatload of money in the NFL, and he himself will make a ton of money in the league. He should be focused on learning the playbook and being the best Cardinal he can be. He says, I have no idea how this gets resolved. It'll be interesting to see how long this drags out. It's not something that looks like it'll go away anytime soon. So, yikes. That's the way he's kind of summarizes the frustration that I feel about this. It's just that with the Cardinals, why can't anything just be easy? You know, I mean, last year with hiring Gannon and breaking NFL rules and all the stuff about that, with the pending lawsuits with Michael Bidwell, we now have another lawsuit on a first-round draft pick who played it coy throughout the whole pre-draft process, unlike anyone has ever done, to my knowledge, in the NFL. I mean, to the point of he's never put a 40 time down on paper this year. Okay. And to many, that's no big deal. And maybe it is no big deal. I don't know. But I just know that it's different. And it makes you wonder whether he's hiding something. Now, we're just seeing him jog through practices right now. I haven't seen him go full speed. But we assume, he's 4.4 something, hopefully. At times on tape last year, he didn't look that. At times he does. He's the guy that gathers up speed really well. He can get it up to 22, I think, 21, 22. The question is, how much speed he can get out of the gate. And I think it's probably really good, but we'll have to see, and we'll have to see how that translates into the NFL, because there were games last year that I watched where he was handled pretty well by college corners, and it makes you wonder. Now, it also made me wonder whether sometimes last year he was making business decisions then, like in the Michigan game when he decided to stop a route, was intercepted, made no effort to get to the ball, then no effort to try to get after the interceptor early in the game. I mean, in his final post-game press conference with Ohio State, they let it off with, couldn't you have fought harder for that football? And couldn't you have chased after the interceptor? And questions about effort. And, but it was on a slant pass, where on other games he's looked a little tentative. It makes me wonder whether he wants any part of running routes over the middle in the NFL. And maybe that's why too you get another Zay Jones in there who can run from the slot with Dortch. And will they minimize Marvin Harrison's use out of the slot? Which, Larry did most of his production out of the slot when he got focused in on that, Larry doesn't have all those 1,000-yard seasons just playing on the perimeter. He mixed it up. Now the expectations are through the roof. There was a website yesterday that is projecting rookie numbers, and the rookie receiving predictions has Marvin Harrison Jr. at the top with 1,200 yards and 6 TDs. Oh, that would be sign me up for that right now. But I feel like that may not be possible in this offense. Not if Trey McBride continues to be the number one target, for one. And for two is not if Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be relegated to the perimeter, or just on crossers, field crossers, where you pass it from one flat to the other, like he did a lot at Ohio State. So, I mean, there's expectations already that he's going to be the top receiver in the league this year. That's going to put a lot of pressure too on Kyler Murray to see how well he bonds with him. He's told Kyler Murray he wants Kyler to be his Peyton Manning, as Peyton Manning was for his dad. There are a whole lot of expectations going on here, as to what's going to happen, when he plays. So, and I'm not sure that's a good thing either. Going in, it's going to create a lot of pressure, and sometimes pressure is good, but sometimes pressure on rookies, plus all the added distractions or the attention. I mean, he seems to be okay with being in the news a lot with these things, or being in the shadows with people talking about these things, and keeping people wondering and waiting. Will that all build up to being something that'll work against him, like it did for Kyler? All that attention, people start questioning, and Kyler's still battling back from the pushback that he received when he was, gathering all this added attention on his money and his bag and his situation. So, I mean, everyone's entitled to get paid, but some people go about it in different ways, and some people, get it straightened out behind the scenes, so it's not a distraction. And unfortunately, we have this distraction on top of other distractions that we seem to have every year, and it's just getting to be just, when is it going to stop? When can we just be a normal football team?
See, that's the thing that makes sense. If you're tired and frustrated about everything that's gone on over the last few years, that's something to be fair about, because even I looked it up, even though 8 of the top 10 picks this year haven't signed their rookie contracts yet, no one is talking about anyone not signing their rookie contract except for Marvin Harrison Jr. because of the NFLPA licensing thing, because of the strange pre-draft process, because of the now Fanatics lawsuit. It just keeps coming up again. So I understand that part. Like, why does it have to be the Cardinals every time that have something like this happening?
Right. And that was part of my pre-draft angst. That's why I was turning off to him, because I don't want all this distraction for our team. We got momentum building, and there's so many good things happening right now to keep us positive. And the work that players are putting in. Let's talk about that for a minute. I mean, our guys are in the building in OTAs, and the leaders are taking making their marks and making sure the guys are in the building, from Kyler to Will Hernandez. If you saw him talking yesterday, what a great guy. Wish they would extend him ASAP. From Hjalte Froholdt, the center, he's all locked in. In fact, he said an interesting thing is that the bell cow right now in the O line room is Evan Brown. And it's interesting that didn't surprise me, because of what Seahawks Forever podcaster Dan Vienne said when I was on his show last week, was that he was really impressed with Evan Brown's leadership. In fact, when he was at a dinner for the offensive line, he said there was, last year for the Seahawks, he said there was no doubt who the leader in the room was. It was Evan Brown. And he said he was really impressed with Evan Brown's play. And Froholdt's been saying that, but he also said this. He said he plays really well, but it just makes you still wonder whether you can get an upgrade. Because maybe he's not the most gifted athlete or whatever, but Froholdt said he is as strong as an ox, and he's got this weightlifting program, training program that's off the charts, and the guys are really bonding with him. And so, there was even question of, in Froholdt's mind, whether he'll stay at center or be asked to move to left guard. so that Brown can play center and he could kick over to left guard, or he'll stay at center and Brown probably would play left guard while they develop Isaiah Adams. So the rookie, I don't think he's going to come in right away and start, but it's good to have those, the depth on the offensive line. The rookies are making their mark in the building. There's so much positive. Look at it, what a difference 2 years makes. When Kyler was holding out, the whole offensive line was holding out. Rodney Hudson was wondering whether he ought to retire. All the wide receivers were holding out. Hopkins was going to have a 6-game suspension. I mean, it was a total mess. And why people blame Cliff Kingsbury on that is so unjust to me. As if Cliff could have changed all that. He couldn't. I mean, it was a tidal wave. And, and at the worst possible time, with the Super Bowl coming to our own building, and not the way to react to a terrible loss in LA. It was everything opposite of what you'd ever want to have happen. And that's the results. And people were saying the whole time to me, no big deal, no big deal. Everything's going to be fine. But, there's cause and effect when you do something here. And I'm worried there's going to be cause and effect about Marvin Harrison's, all these distractions. And now, he's making more of a bullseye on his chest, perhaps, as Kyler did. When you say me, look at me, behind the scenes and for not the best of reasons, this is what happens. It builds bad karma, or can. And we've seen it all too often with the Cardinals. And but getting back to the good things that are happening in that building. I mean, there's the who was it, Froholdt? Or no, it was Will Hernandez who said, when they asked him about voluntary, he said, "You mean mandatory?" And what a change. And he said it tongue in cheek. It's like, hey, we're here to work. We're here to, we got something going now. We realize it. We know what we need to do about it, and we're getting after it. So all that is so positive. Budda Baker is there. I mean, Budda wasn't there last year trying to, get his contract situation straightened out. It's still not straightened out, but he's in the building, and he's working. James Conner, of course, is a bell cow there. So all these positive things, but what remains a distraction here now is what's going to happen with Marvin Harrison Jr. and what's going to happen with the lawsuit. Also, we still have the sword of Damocles as to what's going to happen with the McDonough lawsuits and with Bidwell with the NFL. So, those kind of things. I was hoping we could put in the rear mirror and get ourselves focused in on making ground in this tough NFC West. So, Kyle, if you had, some advice for worrying fans like me, what would you tell me?
Well, I can give you some advice on the Marvin Harrison Jr. stuff because I was looking up some data points to help cool some nerves a little bit. I will say one thing about the OTAs that you just brought up that I thought of with Budda Baker, who wasn't there last year, is there this year but doesn't have a resolved contract. I think there's a pretty clear resolution. It's that he is not getting a contract and that this will be his last year with the Cardinals. It sounds like that's kind of the resolution they've come to at this point, is that they've kind of made it clear that, yeah, a new contract's probably not coming at this point, which stinks, but I don't know why he would be there if not. I mean, he's playing essentially a non-guaranteed deal this year. So we'll see what ends up happening with that one. But once you said that, in my mind, it clicked. I'm like, oh, well, that means he's not getting another contract. That seems to be why, they're kind of gonna make a run for it this year, and then, after that he can hit unrestricted free agency, I guess.
Well, you just did nothing to soothe my anxiety.
Yeah, I get that,
Because
but
now with no, and I'm not blaming you. You're right. I mean, you keep going. We keep going back to unresolved issues, and I cannot, for the life of me, understand why a defensive head coach comes into this building and is okay with just kind of putting Budda Baker in a back seat while elevating offensive players who, quite frankly, didn't deserve it into front seats. And I mean, maybe his whole thing with Kyler is going to work out. The initial 8 games were a mixed bag. 4 good ones, 4 not so good ones. And that's not going to, for Cardinals to compete in the NFC West, Kyler's going to need to be at the top of his game much more often than not. But with Budda Baker, I mean, which other Cardinal has been in a Pro Bowl 6 out of the last 7 years?
none.
Which other Cardinal has made a first team All Pro?
None.
I mean, how is this guy being kind of walked out the door in favor of other players?
Literally the only thing that is working against Budda Baker is just the argument of you shouldn't pay a 29-year-old safety top of the league safety dollars. That's the only explanation there is. And it's a fair explanation, but everything else he's done right. Leadership, team captaincy, consistent production year after year, beloved by the fan base. I remember last year, which obviously last year was not supposed to be a great year for the Cardinals, but the NFL does their whole on the first day of the season, it's like the march to the Super Bowl is on, and they had like the trophy at the stadium, and they had every team in the graphic, and they put Budda Baker in the Cardinals graphic. Like there were most of them were quarterbacks or maybe a receiver, maybe a running back. They put Budda Baker down as the Cardinals face of the team for last year. And the only argument is just you don't pay top end money to a 29-year-old safety on his 3rd contract. And that it sucks that seems to be the reason why they're going in an opposite direction.
Well, there comes a point where you also pay for leadership, and you pay for being the epitome of what you want in a player, which Budda Baker is.
Yeah.
I mean, people were saying the Cardinals paid too much for J.J. Watt. But for the leadership that he brought to that building, and let me talk about that for a second. And I am of the mind, the heart and mind, to suggest that it was that J.J. Watt did more to change this culture for the Cardinals than anybody else. I mean, he held players accountable himself. He did everything by the book and beyond. He showed the guys the work ethic extraordinary that has made J.J. Watt the special player that he is. And you notice now other players are finally doing J.J. Watt things. I mean, Kyler's in the building every day. That's what J.J. Watt did. The day after that Rams brutal loss, J.J. was in there working out after having played in the game, after coming back from major shoulder reconstruction. It was one of the most valiant, epic comebacks I've ever seen in my life. And unfortunately, it all collapsed around him in that game. But there he was, J.J. Watt, starting the next year's preparation day one and doing it all throughout the season. We saw how well he played in his swan song. But here's the thing about J.J. Watt, and it's interesting that it happened too with in Houston when they started to decline, is sometimes when you have like an uber mensch in the building, wherever you're working, someone like a superstar who you look up to and you realize everybody else looks up to and goes, man, I think I'd like to drink whatever he's drinking. But inside, I'm giving it a lot, but I'm not giving it that much. And that creates that sort of the little pause you have in realizing, yeah, I'm pushing it, but am I pushing it hard enough? I mean, look at what this guy's doing. And it makes other people sort of like pale in comparison. Now, in that building, he had James Conner and he had Budda Baker, and they were doing the same thing. So he had, and Zach Allen was doing the same. So he had other guys following, but it wasn't an entire team, obviously. And that whole offseason, the offense was AWOL, while J.J. Watt was in there with his guys getting ready for the season every day, practically, through OTAs and everything. Budda was in there. Budda said he came to help the younger players. So this is where, and Budda was such a huge part of that. Budda's speech to the team that went viral on HBO Hard Knocks. It's just mind-boggling to me why, when you have someone special like that who does everything right and is recognized by his peers as being one of the greatest in the profession.
It goes back to the point that I've said before, is that you should treat Ring of Honor players a little bit better in that sense. And even if it's not going to end in a contract, or even it's going to end in a mutual parting of ways, it just, hard feelings with Ring of Honor players seems to be kind of a theme with the Cardinals pretty consistently.
And God, I wish it would change. And if anyone deserves, this should be Budda's team. It should be. By rights, he earned that. And unfortunately, I just can't understand how a defensive guy could not want to, ride Budda's coattails or jersey tails, because this guy is special. And wherever he goes next, he's going to get, a bona fide winner. And talk about guys who affect culture. I mean, Budda is that kind of guy.
I think that because of the timeline the Cardinals are on right now, it would appear to me the most likely scenario is that, instead of, because his name's going to come up, his name's already coming up in trade rumors. If you type in Budda Baker, like the first three options that come up is like Budda Baker Lions, Budda Baker Steelers, Budda Baker Eagles. But I would imagine, because of the Cardinals timeline, they're probably going to play out this season together and then take the compensatory pick at the end of the season when he signs somewhere else. That would probably be my guess of the most likely outcome with Budda Baker at this point.
Right. And the fact that he's in the building on no guaranteed money, what does that tell you?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, it told me what I said at the beginning, which is he is not getting a new contract. They have made it clear he's not getting a new contract under any circumstances if he's going to show up to play with no guaranteed money.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, who is the best tackler on the roster?
Well, they've added a lot of new people to the roster, but last year it was most certainly Budda Baker. It's been Budda Baker the last 6 to 7 years.
If you polled NFL players as to who the best tacklers in NFL football are, he's top 5. There's no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, he's consistently been at the top of those NFL 100 lists.
Right. I mean, just ask George Kittle who he fears the most in his own division. He'll tell you Budda Baker. All right. So in a game that requires tackling and a defense that, quite frankly, at times hasn't tackled very well, this guy has been an all-star, and he stuck his nose in there. What was amazing to me about Budda was, how he got concussed in the Rams playoff game and carted off the field in an ambulance, and how scary that was for all of us. He came back so he was, while other guys on the offense all went AWOL OTAs, he was one of the first back in the building. He said he had felt an obligation for the younger players in particular to groom them. He was with J.J. Watt, James Conner, and Zach Allen, those who really digged right in the offseason, battling, recovering from that incredible concussion. So he's coming off that kind of a scary injury. And then he turns in one of the most epic seasons. He plays through every injury imaginable until the end when he fractured a shoulder or whatever, where it just was impossible to play. I mean, he had a high ankle sprain that takes 4 weeks. He was in the next game playing. And I mean, the inspiration that he showed his teammates under that, and to not be rewarded for that by this organization speaks very poorly to the way it's run, the way it's organized, who the owner is, etc. The way he didn't get rewarded for any of that is just egregious. And this is why, if they're not going to re-sign him, they ought to trade him now. And don't play around with, do what's right for the player in a situation. Try to get the best value back in return. But Budda deserves so much better, and it just saddens me to no end that the organization that I've grown up loving and supporting all my life would handle situations like this and continue to do that.
And I know people might rebuttal to that, like, oh, it's a business, they got to do what's best for them, it's cutthroat, all the stuff like that. No, like, you mentioned JJ Watt before. I mean, the Texans broke JJ Watt. I don't know if you remember, like, the second to last game he played with the Texans, where he's at the they lost to Brandon Allen and the Bengals, and he's at the podium giving the "if you can't come in every day and put in the work" speech. The Texans cut him and took financial losses to let him go where he wanted to go. They let him out of the contract. When the Lions traded Matthew Stafford and it was time to go, they took less on a trade, and ultimately it worked out because they developed Jared Goff, but they took less than the best offer that was on the table to move Stafford to a place he wanted to go. Like, you can do these things and show respect for Ring of Honor players and players who might end up having jerseys retired in some cases. You can do right by those people if the relationship is coming to an end. And it seems like we were talking about this last year. If the Cardinals aren't going to extend Budda Baker or guarantee money or do a goodwill extension, like we were talking about with the Kansas City Chiefs and Travis Kelce, like, Kansas City didn't extend Travis Kelce. They just gave him money on a 2-year deal he had already signed. If the Cardinals had done that last year with Budda and said, we know you're under contract for 2 years, we know your money's not guaranteed, we're just going to go ahead and do it, that's doing right by your Ring of Honor player. And the Cardinals, like you said, have consistently shown, whether it's Larry Fitzgerald, whether it's Patrick Peterson, they haven't done right by these Ring of Honor players on their way out the door.
Right. Yep. And in my opinion, they do not put a high enough price on toughness. We're always soft. We always take soft players, prima donnas. They hold up prima donnas as like the star players on the team. All of those who create double standards for the entire team. And, look at how far that's gotten them. And then in the end, after everyone's put these guys on pedestals, it all comes crashing down, as it always does when you put players on pedestals who don't deserve it, and who've created double standards themselves and have asked for that kind of treatment themselves. It all just like it's a house of cards and comes blowing right down. And the Cardinals essentially did the same with DeAndre Hopkins last year. They let him go, right? Mm-hmm. So he was in the last year of his deal. The guaranteed money was gone. They knew he'd be a holdout the whole training camp because he won't put up with that. The fact that Budda Baker's in the building doing his thing under these circumstances is a further testament to the kind of character he has. And hopefully, he'll be playing meaningful football somewhere.
Do you want the feel good now? Do you want the feel good? I know we kind of brought the mood down there.
Yeah. Lay it on.
Okay, so I just started because only two of the top 10 picks have signed their rookie contracts so far. So just as a reference point, I went back to some of the picks from last year to figure out when they signed their rookie contracts. So Will Anderson Jr. with the Texans, June 23rd. Uh, Bryce Young with the Panthers, July 22nd.
Right,
Anthony Richardson with the Colts, July 23rd.
right,
CJ Stroud, July 25th. Jameer Gibbs, I think was no, Jameer Gibbs was July 12th. He signed his contract. Ironically enough, the two earliest signings last year on their rookie contracts were Tyree Wilson with the Raiders and Paris Johnson, number 6, with the Cardinals. Those were the two
yep.
earliest signings last year. So the Marvin Harrison Jr. hasn't signed a contract thing is a whole bunch of nothing. This is just how the process works. Most rookies sign their deals right before training camp, especially the ones at the top of the draft that can negotiate a couple million more guaranteed or something along those lines. Usually the later first round picks have signed by now because there's not as much to negotiate, but for top picks, especially top picks like quarterbacks or number one type of prospects like Marvin Harrison Jr., it's a whole bunch of nothing on the fact that he hasn't signed the contract.
Well, I don't think it's a whole bunch of nothing when it's tied into other cases where he's, done unprecedented things. So until he signs, I'm going to be nervous about it. And, you know, uh, plus the other parts, hopefully, will get sorted out between now and then. And hopefully, we can get down to playing football. The thing that worries me too about, what that does practice wise, it hurts the whole team because if he's not under contract, he's not going to be busting it in practice. He'll be walking through and stuff and going, one quarter speed, like just jogging. That is not going to help him integrate into the offense as quickly and assimilate as quickly as he could. I mean, so these are undesirable conditions, and other people have worked around them. I mean, other players have chosen, even though they're not under contract, haven't signed the contract yet, to come in and play their butts off, and without even signing yet. I don't know if Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to do that. I would guess he wouldn't. So, but it can hold the whole thing back in certain degrees. And getting his timing down with Kyler Murray is going to be critical. No question about that. So, yeah, I think thank you for providing those timelines, and you know, thank you for your great input on all that. I'm just feeling as I felt this whole off season, just very sort of concerned about
That's
where this
fair.
is headed. Yeah, and I mean, the other thing that is daunting to me is that in 3 years, you know, I mean, he's probably going to ask for 35 million a year to rip up a rookie contract and
Well, is
maybe
he
even
is
hold
he
out.
is he worth 35 million a year
You
in
know,
3 years? Who knows?
it might be up to 40 by then. So that's in the back of my mind. Is just when the Kyler contract situation might be getting some real relief. We may be staring at having to sign another quarterback or re-sign Kyler on top of Marvin Harrison Jr. wanting to get his bag after 3 years, and like Kyler did. So, and whether it be a holdout, a prolonged holdout, or whatever that's going to look like, based on his just Marvin Harrison Jr.'s decision making and his business decisions, that would not surprise me. In fact, it would surprise me if he didn't um, hold out for that, given that others have, and certainly in the own building with Kyler. So, final thoughts. Go.
Yep, sorry, had to switch our YouTube real quick. I am still curious to see what happens with the Fanatics thing. I just because it's piqued my curiosities, not just because it's Cardinals, but because we've never really seen something quite like that before. So
Yeah.
this is a maybe a byproduct of a post NIL era. I'm not sure this is the case because again, I we don't have a lot of details. We just know what was reported by the New York Times and some other outlets that picked it up, but sometimes what happens in these financial disputes is that if you just throw a lawsuit at it, it resolves it faster because nobody wants to pay for lawyers and bleed money over a possible six-figure case, which I assume is what it is. If Fanatics only paid him $1 million over his time at Ohio State, this is probably a six figures dollar type of dispute would be my guess. But again, I don't know the details on it. Sometimes just the lawsuit gets filed just to resolve it faster because no one wants to actually go through arbitration and pay lawyers to deal with it. So maybe that's
Right.
what's happening here, but I don't think this is something that is tied to the NFLPA not signing his agreement thing, but I genuinely don't know. I'm curious how this all comes together because I don't have a lot of details and haven't seen anything like it before. So that part's interesting. And then from the Cardinal standpoint, it's going to be exciting to follow some of these OTA storylines here because this is you're talking about Budda coming back. Like the 75% of the players on the team now are Gannon and Austin Fort draft picks or free agent signings. So it's going to be interesting to see how they all gel together in the next couple weeks.
So my final thought is, I was commiserating with, Nick Saban. He said he left Alabama because of the NIL, and that all players were ever talking about was, what are you going to pay me? I get that. I understand in a lot of cases, people really need it and deserve it. But, and the NFL is a business, and now you're translating over into a business. There are like smoother transitions and things happen behind the scenes that work everything out. Unfortunately, in this case, it just, there's a lawsuit and question marks. And, obviously, Marvin Harrison Jr. is very focused on the business end. Um, and right, he has every right to be that. But like the guy the writer at Ohio State said, he doesn't at this point really need to be that. I mean, millions of dollars are coming his way. He's got everything lined up. And does he need to be a distraction to the Cardinals and a distraction for the NFL? I don't think he does, but and I'm hoping that changes, where some sort of clarity comes through sooner rather than later. But like like the like the Ohio State guy, writer Ryan Stano said, um, I don't. He said, I don't expect this to be resolved anytime soon. So again, it's going to be a long, long time. That's my other thing. Man, did I agonize over the whole Kyler thing for months and months and months. It just keeps you waiting, waiting, waiting. And like you said, Kyle, you laid it out. I mean, this contract probably won't be done until training camp starts. There might be a lot of indecisions and decisions made in between then. Um, I'm just gonna, hope that it gets resolved sooner than that, so that we can be talking about football. Um, and it's a curious dynamic to me too. Is that the kind of fine line between what the coaches are now saying, team first, team first, team first, but it's still so much business first, then team first, if you can get it. So in this case, oh, fans, let us know. What do you think's going to happen? What's your prediction? How concerned are you? And do you think that uh, Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be able to hit the ground running as a rookie? What kind of a transition do you think it's going to be for him? And do you agree with the forecasters that he's probably looking at a 1,200 yard, six TD season in his rookie season? Or is that pretty lofty to expect at this point? So make your voices heard. Thank you for coming and watching this inaugural YouTube event. We're still publishing the audio on Spotify and Apple and what's the other?
Everywhere you get podcasts. We have people who listen on Amazon. We have people that listen on some obscure podcasting platforms that even I've never heard of before. You know, we're we're everywhere. It could be Apple, Anchor, Amazon, Spotify. We are everywhere that podcasts are
Well,
available.
that's thanks to Kyle and his great efforts for producing the show and being a great co-host. Thanks to all of you for all the support. The numbers have been really great, and we appreciate it. And we're branching out. Let us know if you like the option of having YouTube videos, and and doing that in the future. We'll probably keep doing it until and see what happens. But yeah, in the interim, I hope you have a wonderful week, a wonderful Memorial Day weekend. Enjoy yourself with your families, and be safe and be happy. And go Cardinals! And may the red rain shower down on you into the red sea. Red rain.